this is probably like my third year. I've been doing some stuff for the Massey sort of sports academy now, and I guess all key things we want to really focus on today. I'm just gonna get that. I guess today is about men mental fitness. I guess there's a lot of it's quite interesting. I've been doing a lot of work in the space over the last 4 years, and you'll hear my story. And I think the structure of today is really like I'm going to do first half of like my story, my journey, because some of you may be able to connect in certain ways, and then the second half will be more focusing on some practical elements that I want you guys to work through, some actual practical activity, because I guess this is all, I want this to be a learning experience for you as well, rather than just sitting here listening. But look, nonetheless, we'll keep chipping away and we'll see where it takes us. So as Tamara said, yes, this is being recorded. What I will do at the end though, we'll have some open shares, but then we'll chuck the recording off at the end, and then we'll have some, if you do want stuff to chat as a group, maybe some more personal stuff at the end. It can be just for this group as well, because I wanted to give you guys a better opportunity to chat about stuff with me directly as well. That won't be recorded because I think that's all part of it too. But without further ado, I'll continue on. Just out of curiosity, did anybody come to this talk last year or not? This one specifically. I've seen some of my other talks. 3 there. I know some of you aren't got the cameras on, but that's sweet. Okay, so that's good. So it means that this isn't going to be all new for you too as well. So for those that don't know me, my name's Conrad Goodhew. I am a registered dietitian here in Christchurch. I guess the way I practice is very, I don't like the word holistic, but I am very much trying to change the way we look at nutrition. And I guess I've got a little piece in due course around how I do food and nutrition. And because there is so much more about this, about food than just what goes in and what goes out. And that's, I think it's about that whole the psyche behind how we live. And I think that's where I find a big gap in New Zealand when it comes to men in particular and looking after their health. And I know that you guys that are on this call, listen to this video, are already miles ahead of probably a lot of men out there that potentially do have significant problems. However, I'm not saying that we don't have challenges in our life, and it's how we actually manage them moving forward. So, and to be really clear, I'm not a psychologist. We do a lot of like counseling, behavior change type stuff within the dietetics program. But if you need further support, and some of the stuff may be a bit confronting for some people as well, triggering. So if you do need support, please go and seek it and contact. We've got Rohan here, as well as Tamara down in Massey in Palmy as well. So don't be afraid to reach out if you need further help with that too. Without further ado, let's just kick on. So just a little bit about me and my journey and my story. So I'll go right back to the start. This is obviously a picture of me as a young fella. Of course, loves food, as I'm sure many baby photos do. It's quite ironic when I was digging through all my old baby photos that, the first pictures of me often had food in my hand and food around my mouth. So nutrition's been a really big part of my life. I guess from a young age, I was really fortunate. Parents were sort of brought up in a rural community in Whangarei. Well, I was brought up in Whangarei. Mum was from a place called Whananaki. Dad was from Karaia, so Northland region as a whole. And we lived on sort of a big lifestyle block, farming community and all the rest of it. So I was able to get outside a lot and get around sort of sport and all that sort of carry on from quite a young age. And as you can see here, I broke my arm at 2. That was that photo there. I was again at 7 and again at 12. So like I was very active kid, very full on. Sport was a massive part of my life. I think that's what the next photo here is. Yeah, sport was a massive part of my life. Being obviously an up and coming rugby player, as all young people want to be an All Black in their time. But I also played rugby from the age of 4. I think I picked up a golf club at 7. I played cricket since probably about 7 as well, among everything else. And having that environment when I was back home in the farm and able to build stuff and climb trees and help, dad with the sheep and, all that sort of stuff. I was really fortunate to have sort of that traditional Kiwi upbringing. But obviously that comes with a lot of other things that New Zealanders aren't so good at either, which is communication, especially when it comes to father and sons. But like I said, I was really fortunate. My parents were together the whole way through, and still are now. But when I speak a little bit further around the journey, I'll explain some more on that stuff. So that's that sort of upbringing. I think it was pretty standard from young age to high school. Nothing extraordinary. When I was at intermediate, I was really into sort of the cultural side of things. So like did a lot of singing, obviously a lot of sport, all that sort of thing. I was read back through all my reports recently and looking at quite an outgoing, I guess, person, and the teachers wrote a lot of positive things about me, and I was really fortunate about that. But my academic side of things probably weren't as strong as what they should have been. So I think it was late primary school I was diagnosed with dyslexia. So I've been part of a reading had reading literacy support from a very young age, which again quite fortunate to have, but has made my traditional schooling quite difficult in terms of being put in the lower classes, especially when I entered high school. So high school was Whangarei Boys High School, but I was put in I was like the third lowest class, purely based on my grades at intermediate with other STAs or whatever things I did back then. Before, so I moved in there. I was fairly low down, so obviously exposed to probably not so much problem children, but probably more those ones that struggled a fair bit throughout high school. But I guess sport was my outlet through that time. As you can see, golf, I got pretty serious through high school, as well as I still played cricket and rugby quite competitively, and also played squash actually at a provincial level as well. So golf, squash, rugby, all at age group provincial level throughout that time. But school definitely didn't come, high school didn't come easy for me at all. I was born in May, so I was pretty much the youngest in the year throughout the whole school, of my year group, as well as I was a late maturer. So I was always very short, very immature, so to speak, physically. So I think in hindsight, there was a fair bit of bullying that I thought was normal, but apparently wasn't. So there's that side of things. I went down to St. Kent's in Auckland. For anybody who knows Auckland, it's a private school, and I only lasted there for 2 weeks. Again, I was in the boarding school, walking into a boarding school at year 11 for as sort of the outsider. You can imagine what the boys did to you the early days there. So I actually only lasted 2 weeks because it was too full on. I think there was a lack of flexibility there to play golf as well, and that was where I really wanted to go. So I ended up back up in Whangarei for year 11, and then for year 12 and year 13, I actually did this sort of like a academy style program, which I did two subjects in year 12, which is chemistry and PE at high school. And then I did the rest of it by correspondence. And I did one, which is only chemistry in year 13, and did the rest of it by correspondence. I always had the intention of going to Massey and being a vet. And that's what kind of led me to do pretty much the 3 sciences and calculus in year 13. And again, with dyslexia was really interesting, and trying to manage, I guess, that throughout that time whilst playing a lot of golf and quite competitively as well in terms of my sport. So that was sort of the upbringing before I left home. And I guess I was very young. So I was only like 17 and a half when I moved to university. And that's where I moved to Massey then as well. And rather than playing golf, because golf's crazy expensive for those that do know the sport, especially if you play quite a high level, you're paying, $8, $10 a golf ball. And as a student, that's quite substantial at a time that will last all around. So I took up rugby, and it was a really good social opportunity for me. And it was my first time that I was away from home properly in terms of being the social scene. Something I didn't mention at high school, because I was so caught up in the sport, because of all the bullying that happened throughout high school, I wasn't very social in the scheme of like going out drinking and doing any of that stuff. So I guess I was well protected from that early days, because I found obviously Whangarei is a fairly dangerous place as well, out after dark, and because I was only 17, I didn't really want to do the whole party thing anyway. But I moved to Palmy when I was 17, and obviously did the rugby thing and got very much caught up in the rugby life. So I kind of went 0 to 100 on the booze setup. I pretty much, once I hit 18, which was in May, I guess it was a few times before that. It was every Thursday, every Saturday night, absolute sends really. And then obviously playing footy and around that. And that would have been my university life in Massey for the whole 3 years, as well as once rugby season finished, to be Friday nights as well. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights. Because of the correspondence, I didn't actually get into the first year vet papers. Something happened with my credits didn't go through, and by April, so I actually did a bridging course. By April, they ticked that box and said, actually, you didn't need it. So that was a real interesting journey in terms of just going to university, basically, and wasted a semester that I didn't need to do because of some credit misjudgment. So I got, as you can imagine, put up with that scene. But it was sort of that end of the year that I did the business papers. Did 4 business papers at the end of semester, in semester 2, end of first year, and then from there I actually incorporated the science papers and looked at the Bachelor of Science and Bachelor of Business conjoint in sport was my plan, until I realized that I tried to do tried to do a paleo diet, trying to put on weight for rugby, and that's what happened. So I thought there was a better way of doing this. And then at the start of the third year, I thought I've got to start looking at some nutrition schools. And then funny enough, I actually looked down to Dunedin, where what have I got next? Yeah. Dunedin, where I actually ended up moving down there to do a Bachelor of Applied Science, majoring in sport and exercise nutrition as well as dietetics, which was an encouragement for me. So my university journey hasn't been straightforward. It's very much took me 3 years trying to figure out what I wanted to do, to actually get some focus at the end of the day. As my parents owned a building company at the time, very much financially driven and trying to be successful in that way, that everything was like, okay, what's the job going to be at the end? How much money are you going to earn? How are you going to pay off your student loan? I'm sure a lot of you are actually feeling that pressure maybe now as well. But I was just like, I have no idea what job there are at the end, but I know this is an area that I want to work in and who I want to be. So I guess sport nutrition was very much a passion project, and it was very new at the time. I guess that have been now 5 years there, 5 years out, 10 years ago, that I sort of made that decision and actually going over. So you can imagine how much nutrition's changed in even that time. Sweet. So then I moved to, you can see I look pretty spacey there. So I moved to Otago, had my first year there, which was great. New place, didn't know anybody. Went and played rugby, trying to push the top grade. And it was actually, the first year was okay. I was doing really well. And then the second year in preseason, I blew my knee out. And that's when everything kind of imploded for me in hindsight. So I spent 4 years at uni trying to get somewhere with rugby. At that time, I had a really close friend of mine who actually, she was diagnosed with cancer 2 years prior to that. She had a 2-year battle with cancer. And at the start of my second year in Otago, she passed away. So that's kind of when there was like a lot of stress that was in that time. I guess, again, a lot of alcohol, because that's all I really knew how to deal with the emotions. And that's when I blew my knee out. Would have been 4 weeks after, I think, or 3 weeks after. 4 weeks after she passed away. So whether that was all combined, whether it was just happened to be at the same time and fate was teaching me a lesson, I'm not sure. But it was a pretty significant time in my life. And I was actually misdiagnosed through the physio said, I don't think you've done your ACL. But we'll get you checked anyway. The sports doctor said, I don't think you've done your ACL, but we'll get you checked anyway. Sure enough, that was 6 months later, I got surgery. So that was obviously a 8-month process after I got surgery to get me back on the field the year after. So this is all like quite a significant thing at the moment. I talk to a lot of rugby players now that I'm working with, and the impact that can have for them. So, but again, there was a lot of unknown, not sure what's happening, not sure what's wrong with me. I know something's not right, but you know, what's the go here? I actually really fortunate because I'm Māori. I actually got access to a Māori counsellor down in Otago who actually gave me a bit of support at that time. And it was more just general, get some stuff off my chest and move on, but didn't really get to the crux of a lot of issues. But again, that was hugely beneficial for me at that time. But anyway, so I moved on and played rugby, got back on the field the next year, but I still wasn't 100%, and never was going to be back as the athlete that I thought I was able to be, because obviously there's a lingering cloud over your head that's pretty full on. And then actually the year after that, again, played Premier, starting to make something of it, and did my knee for a second time. Not an ACL, but another meniscus tear. So you can imagine it was pretty much 3 years of injury and rehab to get me where I needed to get to. And even to this day, it still causes me issues. But in around that, I guess it taught me a lot of lessons. And I have worked with a lot of athletes now that have come through injuries, and I can actually relate to the process they're going through. And I just know that injury was almost the best thing that happened to me. That was the worst thing, if that makes sense. That could also be the worst thing that happened to me, purely because it actually switched my mindset at that time. So at the end of that, in that year that I did do my knee, I actually did dry July, because I was like, I need to do something with my booze, and realized that, and because it was like raising money for cancer and stuff, I thought, why not? And I realized that at that time, I could actually go out and socialize. I could have conversations. I could do what I needed to do without alcohol being the stimulant that it needed to get to loosen up the vocal cords in a way. So that was really useful. And it probably that showed me a different way that I'd probably been doing for the last 4.5 years. Or no, it was almost 4.5 years of basically boozing up as a student. So it took me that long. I hope it doesn't take other people as long as what it does, but I think that's something that I, again, continue to feed back to coaches and management in the rugby space to ensure that we're still young athletes with crazy minds. So after I left university and did my degree, so I did my placement back in Palmy, which was awesome, for dietetics, and went through that whole master's program, which was absolutely incredible. And it was the first time that study was easy for me. Working with dyslexia, I had to actually work through all my research. I remember in my final exams for clinical, I literally drew the gastrointestinal system on sticking A3 things together and looked at wherever nutrients were absorbed, excreted, all this clinical diagnosis, because I had to make it practical for me, and that's how I can relate my information practically to other people. So once I got into dietetics, or that process at the end, I was actually don't want to blow my own trumpet, but I was really good at what I do, because I had to learn it in such a simple way for me to remember, rather than being all technical and trying to do that. So if anybody who is intending on working with people, number one thing is, how do you make a complex thing easy? And that's what we got drilled into us. But again, I was quite fortunate that I was able to do that. But also what happened after I left uni, so I landed my so-called, what I thought, the dream job with the Crusaders. And I have pretty much won a championship every year since I've been with them. But I've also worked with the academy, and I've actually got more passion to work with the academy as well, which is really awesome. Obviously, you get paid stuff all in professional sport, 25 hours, but it was probably earning twice as much as what you'd be getting as a student. So it seemed like a lot at the time, which was great. But what happened then was, obviously, a still new place, like new city, don't know anybody again, still got into sort of the party scene because it was the easy way to socialize. But I guess I was a lot more mature about it at that time, for most part. Could there be things I did better? Absolutely. But it's still stuff that we're working on. But nonetheless, so it would have been, God, what year was it now? Second year here. At the end, my uncle committed suicide. So that was quite an important switch for me. And this wasn't just like an uncle. This was like the best man for my wedding's dad. So like extremely close. And I guess that was the time that we kind of thought, okay, what is this mental health thing? And I guess that's when it started to be talked about a lot more. And I sort of jumped on the bandwagon, so to speak. So I started talking about stuff on my social media, about, how we need to speak more about mental health, and start to, send these messages and all the rest of it. And that was only targeted, or the only reason why I did that was actually so I'd hope my dad would see it, or hope my dad would hear it. because I was hoping that he would pick up those messages. So, and that's where I sort of did stuff for the mental health. So like I did just the run, trying to raise money for them, and sort of, I guess, what I like to see cool now is it's fantastic and it's important, but I still find it's quite superficial in the scheme of the big issue at hand that we have, especially as men. So that was quite a confronting time. And I think the next one is not so I did a lot of runs at that time. That was kind of the year that, just blew my knee out and I needed something to get an outlet. So I picked up ultra endurance running. For someone who's not a runner at all, not exactly a mountain goat by any means, but that's a picture of me doing Mount Difficulty, which is 44 Ks, which doesn't seem like that long, but it's 3,500 meters elevation. So it's very much like there's one part that is, I think you're climbing 1,500 meters over a K and a half or something. It's crazy. It was awesome though, but really invigorating stuff like that. Ran a couple of ultra marathons, did this one here. I ran my first Queenstown Marathon. I decided I was going to sign up and do it. And that was really, really exciting experience because it was something that I wasn't playing sport anymore. I didn't want to have anything to do with rugby because I worked in it all day. So I needed another outlet. And that was my way of doing that, which is awesome. I met some amazing people, learned a lot of stuff about myself throughout that time as well. So that was really interesting, going through that process. And and that's when I kind of, I guess, started to, in a way, find myself. But it was this time here where, because I was talking so much about the like mental health and stuff on social media, that the company, I'm not sure if you know them, but Lululemon, they're like a clothing brand, and they really wanted to help. They really wanted a big push to help men. This was in 2018, I think, that I did this talk, or started 2019. So I went in and I got asked to speak about mental health in this talk. Really interesting, because it was the first time that I actually spoken about it publicly, done a lot of videos, done a lot of talks, nutrition, but actually standing up at that time, I pretty much broke down when I was standing in front of a group of about 20 people. So it's quite interesting that was a real trigger for me, and going like, I think I know what I'm talking about, but I didn't really. And that was my point when I was like, I need to start moving away from focusing on mental health being a raising awareness thing into a, hey, how do we start taking action? How do we start to change mentality of men in general? And that was the point that I realized that I didn't realize how big an impact that my uncle's death had on me. And I guess my family and my relationship with everybody that was around me, I guess. So I was actually sent away, I don't think there's a photo here, was sent away to Melbourne to do an immersive course with, was it 26 other blokes at a winery by Lululemon, to do sort of like a 3-day men's retreat. It was I came back with like an emotional hangover. It's the most, I guess, I can't even, it's so hard to describe how beneficial it was. But what it did was enabled me to just stop and actually realize and try to figure out who I was. And it was that first moment in my life that I thought I was someone that I wasn't, or I was chasing someone who I thought I wanted to be. And that was at, what was I, 26, I think, when I got sent away there. So 26 years of not knowing who I was deep down, to understand who that was. So, and I remember this vividly, and we'll do this exercise at the end. I was asked, we got given 5 cards, all right? We had to write on the back of the cards what our values were. It's quite interesting. On 3 of those 5 cards, I wrote down money for something, like money for security, money for holidays, money for like a beach house, I think I wrote. Like, I thought that my values were associated with money, and I think the other 2 were, I actually got them floating around somewhere. I should have a look, see what they were. But like, they're very superficial. They're very much like chasing a potential goal that my parents had almost set for me, or thought that ingrained, without them actually intentionally doing it. It was just the way that I perceived myself. So I went away to this thing, and until I actually heard what other people were saying, I'm like, I don't know what the hell a value is or who I am. So I went away and I did a lot of work and figured that stuff out. But in that time, I created a bit of a group here called the Man Cave, and it was using the concepts from this this trip away with Lululemon and actually bringing it back to Christchurch and doing a 4-week program, which was an hour and a half each day, about basically talking about sort of 3 different areas. It started off with reflecting on the past, focusing on the present, which is values and stuff. We'll talk about this soon, and then what the plan is for the future. And in the first session, we had 20 guys, and we had, I'd say, 50% of them crying in a room, which I'd never even imagined it would have gone that deep that quickly. And it just shows that if you give men a space to talk and to connect and do that, it's really easy. But the problem is we're in society where we're told to talk more about it, but it's like, what does that look like? And it's about sort of creating these spaces like I did here to then to help that. So this is my experience in doing this. I want to go back and do it, but this happened literally right before the first lockdown that we rolled out the first program. And basically the week after we finished, lockdown happened, and it all sort of turned to custard. And we tried our best to connect men, but it was actually really, really difficult thereafter. So it lost its momentum. And unfortunately, we've had to sort of close down the man cave, so to speak. The concept's still there, the idea's still there, but I want to roll out it again in a different sort of way as well to encourage men, not just to talk about or to work on their mental health, but actually every other aspect in their life as well. So that was something that sort of happened at that time. And that's a lot of learning, because I didn't realize how much pressure it takes to deal with someone else's stuff, especially if it is a guy so you sit there in a circle as a group with 10 guys and you give everybody a chance to talk about their stuff, but you also want to give them space to do so. And that can be massively taxing. So something that I always hear today, people go, "Oh, hi, how you going?" But it's like, I always think to myself, I'm like, if you really wanted to know, you would stop and actually ask me the question and give me space to do so. And that was where I kind of switched my script of, let's stop raising awareness and start taking action. And what that means is, rather than just walking past and go, "Oh, hi, how you doing?" or using "how you doing" as a hello point, I actually started to stop and ask that question a second time. And people would get caught off guard. And when they start to actually go there, you go, "Oh yeah, sweet, should we just grab a coffee at some stage and we'll have a catch up," or whatever it may be. And for most times that can be what people need. And that could be the next step for them to go and see someone's more specialized in the area. And unfortunately, counselors and psychs are completely overrun at the moment, because we're starting to talk about it more, if that makes sense. But I just want to make sure that when we are creating these spaces, that we're not taking the burden on ourselves, because I got burnt out fairly quickly while trying to manage these groups and everybody else that was messaging me. So we had like a Facebook group for the man cave. And yes, some of the stuff that I was dealing with behind the scenes was it was too much, as well as trying to deal with my own stuff during that time. So I think, when the lockdown happened, I got made redundant from the Crusaders as an employed job. So that's obviously was a big shift for me. Fortunately enough, I had my private business ticking away in the background, starting to build that. So it pushed me into that space and forced me to be better. So I was dealing with the redundancy. I was dealing with obviously just COVID in general and dealing with everybody else's emotions, plus trying to run that man cave. It was quite overwhelming. And this is where I find a lot of people that enter the mental health space and they want to do some really good work. And I'm not discounting you, and I want to do that. I think my advice is join someone else and help them rather than trying to create your own, because I think that was a big thing that I took away from that. Is actually getting the right group around you, so you can actually sort of take turns at taking the punches in a way, so you can give yourself time to heal. Because it is very confronting. But nonetheless, this was actually the photo of the second championship we won, and that is my now fiance Jess, who we are going to get married at the end of the year. And that should be, we're really excited about that. So since then, during that lockdown period, actually, we built our house together. So I met her just before I went to Australia, and she's actually helped me a lot in terms of understanding myself as well. She's done a psych undergrad and likes to analysis. You can imagine doing some analysis, but she's actually an audiologist now by trade. But we built a house during that time. So that's, I guess, the financial pressure's always there and always going to be a burden with mortgages and etc. We've also managed, as you might have heard him in the background or seen him at the start. We picked up a rescue dog at the start of last year as well, who now is getting more reactive with people and obviously got a lot of behavioral problems as well. So we're sort of working through that, which is another thing to consider for us in our lives. But more recently, I'm just being mindful of time. I want to get into some other stuff as well. More recently, this was only 3-4 weeks ago now. I was officially diagnosed with ADHD. So it's kind of one of these things that everything makes sense now. Why I studied the way I did, why I act the way I am, why I struggle to, well, why probably me and my dad struggle to communicate, why I think I struggled so much at school. All these sort of things are sort of starting to make sense. And also why I think that I can't run my business. I've got all these good ideas and I've got all these good intentions, but can't actually follow through with a lot of them. And it's quite interesting when you go through that process to actually understand of who you are and what you want to do, because I want to help everybody. We can't say no. But the problem is your mind's at 100 miles an hour that you can't actually get anything sort of structured well enough. So yeah, I've tried everything under the sun, from meditation to planning to all the rest of it, to manage my symptoms that I suppressed and had managed really well my whole life, why it hasn't come to fruition. And it's actually really interesting. We did a questionnaire. Jess, my partner, and my mum did a questionnaire, and I did it. There were obviously some similarities, but there are a lot of things that I actually suppress or manage well in my head that isn't shown out to the public. So they kind of misjudge that a little bit. And it was actually quite interesting sort of seeing that feedback. So I think this is a thing. When it comes to mental health or mental fitness, there's no on or off switch. It doesn't, like, you don't get fixed, so to speak. Everything's managed from here on in. So I think it's really crucial that as an individual, that reason why we use the word mental fitness is because it's actually improving your mental state rather than having a mental illness, which a lot of the time an illness can be dealt with, but fitness, you can always get, mentally fitter, so to speak, where you have to manage your fitness better. So I think it's really important that, and plus fitness has a positive connotation to it, doesn't it? So I think that's why we want to really focus on and going like, okay, how do we improve ourselves and how do we get better? So this is the sort of the philosophy that I run by and what my business runs by. And we can see here that nutrition is very much, food. So nutrients, so macronutrients, which is calories, and protein, fats, carbs, and then you've got micronutrients, which are vitamins and minerals. So you can see that that's just the food, but we also see that all these other things are affected. So your environment, your sleep, and obviously your mental and emotional health, as well as actually behavior change, is all kind of intertwined as a nutrition subject. I'm sure you guys that have seen me speak before have seen this, but what's really interesting is a lot of my discussions, especially in the environment with my clients, especially men, is about the relationship that they have with their partner, if they have a partner, and actually changing their mindset around that space and how they need to be better blokes, and reduce the stigma or change the stigma of masculinity, and how we actually better manage ourselves. Because guys, like, physiologically with food, is very straightforward. It's like they have the easiest thing to do to make those changes in terms of eating good. They'll get the results, whereas females are a lot more complicated. It's this stuff here for blokes that we really struggle with, that the females are really good at. Okay. And that's what I find in my clinic all the time, and something I will make really clear to men too. Okay. But habit creation is a big thing that I always talk about, and this goes for mental fitness as well. Takes on average 66 days to create a habit, anywhere from 18 to 254, but it's really important that you actually continue on with these habits. And I've designed a program around this. I'm currently reading a book, again, not the Atomic Habits, it's a different one. That's actually about the science behind habits. And there's actually 40% of the actions you take a day are habits. So, like, habits are things that you don't actually think about. So that's something to consider with that as well. Okay. But what I want you to do, we've got 3 exercises to get through. I'm not being really mindful of time. If you've got a pen and paper, I hope you do. Or if you've got a cell phone next to you, I hope you do as well. I want you to do some reflection and write down these things as well. 10 minutes is probably really good. So what I might actually do, I might actually we might come back to this one, or I'll get you we'll take a screenshot or whatever it may be and come back to managing this and come back. And I think this will be a really good one. So what I want you to focus on is write these things down. So write the most important person in your life and why. Spend 5 minutes thinking about that. On the next page, picture yourself back when you were a child. What was your most favorite spot? Write that down. What was the most impactful moment of your life? For me, when I sit down and do this, was when I blew my knee out. And the second time was when I actually stood up with that Lululemon thing. 2 really important, impactful moments that actually changed the course of action. And then also what you want to do is reflect on your old 5-year plan. What did you do? Did you sit down, etc.? Okay, so I think do some reflection on this. This might be one for go away because I really want to focus on the next one. Has something to do right now. Okay, so this is exercise 2. And so this is the reflection I want you to do and go away with. This is what I want you to do right now. So what I'm going to do, all right, write, if you've got a piece of paper, write, if you can have a look here or write 5 values on a piece of paper. Okay, I'll give you a couple of minutes to do this. So write your 5 values down on a piece of paper. If you can, put them on separate pieces of paper, even better. You can. Give you 30. You can use these ones. Have a look through. They should stand out to you. And if you read this blog, I'll explain more soon. They actually get you to circle them all as well. And there might be more than just 5. But I want to give you a list because I never got a list when I did this. I've already given you a cheat sheet. And that can be outside of this as well. So once you've got your 5, if you've got them on separate bits of paper, great. And if you can put them upside down and sort of shuffle them around so you kind of maybe know which ones are which or which ones aren't. Sorry, mix them up a bit if you can. And what I want you to do from there is take your 3 middle ones, and if you've written them on a list, remove them from your list, and you should be left with 2 either end. Now I want you to think, based on those 5, are those 2 out of the 5 the most important to you? Or are there those 3 in the middle, possibly one of yours? Or you feel lost without those ones in the middle? So if you think if those were your only 2, is there one in the middle there that's more important to you? Has anybody got an answer for me there? We'll come back to it at the end. That's not recorded too, if you guys want to say something. Not sure. No. Maybe. Yeah, we'll chat about it at the end anyway. But this is the thing, if you got to figure out your 2. So when in Alex's blog, he actually writes that you actually circle everyone that you think is you, and then you got to pick 5. And then ideally you want to break those down into 2. And if you got more than 2, what he says, and look, there's no right or wrong to do this, that you actually you don't know your values, or your values aren't strong enough. And of course you can layer them. So there could be like 4 things that all mean sort of the same thing or all intertwined, and there might be that one thing that's the difference. So for me, my values would probably be authenticity and leadership would be my main 2. If someone was to ask who you are, that's my reply. I'm authentic and I'm a leader, basically, because that's what I stand by, and whatever I do, those are at the forefront of the decisions that I make. And yes, family is a huge part of mine. Don't get me wrong. Probably more so as of late, for sure. But that will be something I think once I have kids, it will be a lot more at the forefront for me, for sure. But it's actually knowing that if I know I'm a good leader and I'm authentic, that's for my family as well, that my family will be provided what I need. if that makes sense. For other people, family could be at the absolute number one. Whatever I do, no matter what, family's at the top of the list. And look, this is a beautiful thing. It's so different for everybody, but I want you to actually think to yourself, who am I and what are my values? Because if you know them, it makes life massive, massive difference. Okay. So that could be interesting to go away and have a look at that one. There's another exercise here. Some goal setting. I don't like goals personally. I think they're a pass fail situation. They are useful to create a pathway, but I don't think we should get too caught up in goals. So the question I think to start off with at the top of the list, it will probably take 5 or so minutes to do this. What I want you to do is write down, what do I want? Whether it be from life, what do I want? Just what do I want? Okay. Could be a goal, could be something specific. Don't have to think smart. Just write something down, okay? Because this is just an exercise. So what do I want? And then from there, I want you to answer the question, why is this important to you? From that there, okay? And your answer will be, okay, so I want to have, I want to make, let's say, just say something ridiculous. So I want to make $500,000 in the next year. Blow apart, or next 5 years, make $500,000. Why is that important to me? Because I want to be able to live a long and sustained life, and or have money, or not feel like I'm don't have enough money. And then like, why is that? So I got to ask that question again. Why is that important to you? Why is having enough money or not feeling like you don't have enough money? Oh, because I want to make sure that my kids get what I want or what they need in terms of good education, etc., and the support. Okay, well, why are the kids things important? Does that make sense? So rather than asking why is it important to you, that same top question, it's what you got to do is ask that question before. Okay, so what do you want? Why is that important to you? And then it's like the question 3 is, why is it important to you? Well, why is the answer to question 2 important to you? Then question 4 is why is the answer to question 3 important to you? I think I've explained that all right. So I'll give you sort of 5 or so minutes to rip through that and see what you come with at the bottom. You need to do it 6 times, ideally. Okay. You may find you go around in circles, and we'll have a chat about this at the end. Just gonna see if I can. I'm trying to put some music on. I'll bring that back up in a second. Bear with me. Drink. Alrighty. Hope you've got some stuff written down there. Does it get hard as you get down the list? Or is it does it repeat? Does anybody want to share anything at the moment? Yeah, we can share at the end too. We need to. Cameras off. No? Cool. What we might do is, again, like I said, we'll have that, we'll have a chat at the end. But in the meantime, just on sort of anything, that one more thing, your values also need to match your goals. Like I said, that one I said before about the money, I think that's not a value of mine anymore. So I'm going to get down that list very quickly and find out probably what's actually more important to me. You can still use any example, but bottom line is it will come back to me setting my future up so I can actually work less to be there more for the people that I need to be there for. And a big one for me is leadership and authenticity. So I'm ensuring that whatever I do in my life, and I'd go down those whys, end up at that point. And that is so my goal at the moment, or what my plan is business wise, is to actually set up my private practice so I can actually employ more dietitians and give them pathways that I've sort of grinded out for so long to try to figure out how to do it effectively and efficiently, and they can actually be paid what they should be paid and supported the way they need to be supported, that I didn't have. So that sort of comes under my leadership role, and that's where I could probably look at earning, I know it's a pretty large number, it's $500,000 to then fund that, and that's what would be at the bottom of my list, because that is the key thing. So the top is not important. The bottom thing is what's most important to me. And this is important. So when you do set goals and you do set ambitions, is that it needs to come down and actually finish at those values that actually match those goals. So that's kind of the work in progress. So whatever goal it may be, whatever thing you think of in the future, what you want to do at the end of your career, go through that why. Like, why is that important to you? Do you want to keep doing it? And I've had people make significant business decisions. I've had people sell farms. I've had people that have changed jobs. I have had people that have completely, changed the relationship they've had with their partner because they're focusing on things different for guys, but just doing the simple exercise. So it just brings a lot to light in terms of what you actually want in life. And that's why this sort of process of going, like, starting at that exercise 1, working on exercise 2, and then going into this third exercise is a really nice pathway to figure out who you are and what you want out of life based on what you've done in the past, and what things you need to work on. So that's what we did in the man cave, as a sort of a 3-pronged approach. And like, we were there for, like I said, an hour and a half, but we shared a lot of stories and a lot of discussions. And I think that was a really big part of it. So if you want, I can give you the template that you could get a group of mates together and go through that process, then catch up, once a week for 3 weeks and go through it and rip the Band-Aid off and get stuck in. It's quite interesting when you get people to talk, but we had 15 people, so it's pretty cool. But before that's sort of the end of the formality stuff. Has anybody got any questions on any of my journey? I'm an open book. I'll tell you exactly. I don't, like I said, authentic. I won't lie to you. So tell me exactly what you. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions? Personal ones, professional ones, whatever else it may be. About me? No, nothing. All right. Well, that'll be that. That's that. In terms of the formalities, I'll pause.